So there I was, slightly sick, laying in bed, totally valid to call out of work. Silly me decided it was finally time to play Hades. And a few hours in, I made a decision that I think a lot of you made before. I decided to be just a little bit more sick than I actually was. I missed work that day. And the next day. And the next day. Greetings, universe! I'm SpaceC. I make games, specifically a magical girl game. And today we are going to reverse engineer how Hades turned me into a professional sick day faker. So, I thought I understood why I couldn't stop playing, but when I actually sat down to analyze it, I realized I was actually looking forward to die, which as a game designer kind of broke my brain. Today I'm going to explain exactly why that happens. Okay, so full transparency. I picked up Hades under false promises. A friend at work recommended it, and I said, "Oh, I don't have time for games that take forever to finish." And he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Oh, you can finish this game in about 40 minutes." I've never touched roguelikes before Hades, so naive me was like, "Oh, cool, 40 minutes." 4 hours in, and I didn't beat Mummy Megara, the first boss, even once. I was supposed to be at work, and instead I was there, dying over and over, getting insulted by her in 20 different ways each time, and completely unable to stop. I really enjoy stories in games and never skip cutscenes, so the moment I start playing, I didn't want it to be short. And that's entirely because of how alive the underworld feels. Kinda poetic. The voice acting is not just good for an indie game, it's just good. Every character sounds like a real person that's been alive for a while. They have opinions and a bad day they're still recovering from. You can actually imagine what some characters did each day before you talk to them. The character design is distinct enough that you could recognize any character from just their shadow. This is incredible. The music shifts based on where you are and what's happening on the screen. Every aspect of this world feels intentional. And this is so awesome. But the writing is what really got me. The ridiculous amount of unique dialogue in this game. Characters remember what happened in your last run. They have opinions about your choices. They grow based on your actions. Each player will get to experience a different version of the game, even though it's a very linear story that doesn't even really branch out. And this believable world is really important. You can't get addicted to something you don't care about. So, before a single drop of dopamine gets released, you need a reason to care. Supergiant built a world so specific and so alive that just existing in it is a dopamine hit for players like me that enjoy stories in games. And then they gave us characters worth caring about. Thanatos is my personal favorite. He's the moody personification of death. Quiet, serious, acts like he has somewhere more important to be. Your typical tsundere. He reminds me so much of Shaoran's bi panic towards Yukito and Sakura. The way he clearly cares so deeply for Zagreus, but absolutely refuses to admit it. So cute! There's this one moment Zag gives Thanatos the fancy orange drink and says, "Take it, I won't accept it. What is this, Zag, for an answer?" And Thanatos is like, "What is this, Zagreus? I'll accept it, but I never said I don't like you," and makes an excuse to run away blushing like crazy. It was so adorable! Why did he run away? I desperately wanted them to continue talking and sort out their feelings for one another. That's the kind of character writing that makes you want to come back. Not for the gameplay, for them, for the baby. And honestly, realizing this made me scared about my game I'm making because I'm one voice actor and I can't voice 30 characters. I don't have supergiant Steam, but there's still a way to make it work, I think. Let me know if you think I'm right. One character who reacts to whatever the player actually does, who feels like they really see you, I think it beats 10 characters that don't do that and just feel like they would say what they have to say no matter what the player does. My plan for my game is to put this into a single character who will actually respond to how you play. It's technically overscoping, and my game designer brain knows that, but I keep coming back to this idea that even one character saying, "Yeah, I saw what you did there," I think it changes everything about how alive a world feels. What do you think? Is it worth the scope? But the problem is, even a world this good as Hades, it just can't save a roguelike from its biggest enemy, and you probably know what I'm about to say. Death. Hades was my first roguelike, and it did something I had never seen before. In most games, death means failure. You lose progress, you feel punished. Enough deaths, and you consider if this is even worth your time. In Hades, death is the delivery mechanism for the story. Every time you die, you return to the house of Hades. And the house is not a loading screen with furniture, it's a social space. Characters have new things to say all the time. Relationships build and the story moves forward. You learn something new about Zagreus, about his mother, about why he's trying to escape, and this builds little by little after each death. Your brain releases dopamine not when you get a reward, but when you're anticipating a reward. The moment the game goes back into the house, your brain doesn't think, "Aw, I failed." It registers, "Ooh, I wonder what happens next." And, "Ooh, time to get stronger." That's a completely different chemical response in your brain. Death stops being a punishment and starts being your story progression and your way to power up. And maybe you missed it, but old areas actually keep changing every few runs. New enemy types appear in Tartarus, and you get to meet Megara's sisters. Also, at some point, you get to unlock fishing. Fishing is pretty much a must for a game, and petting cute animals too.
Did you know only 35% of players pet him 10 times? Go log into the game and pet him.
So, old areas never feel boring because more layers of gameplay are added slowly the more runs you're going through. This is something I think about constantly for my game. What happens when a player fails? Right now, I'm actively figuring out how to make losing not feel like a punishment. Even something small like one line of dialogue that acknowledges what just happened. I think it reframes the whole thing. It goes from, "I failed," to, "Okay, the story is still moving." I think that principle applies to any game and not just roguelikes. Failure should feel less painful, I think. So, if you want to see how I actually implement this, and more importantly, be one of the first people to tell me where I got it completely wrong, I'm looking for playtesters for my game. Link to sign up in the description. Now, all of this makes you want to stay in the world, but there's still another problem. What happens mid-run when things start going wrong? What keeps you from just giving up and starting over? The feeling Hades creates that I think is a bit underappreciated is the feeling that stopping right now would be a waste. You're always in the middle of building something. The first boon that ever made me go, "Okay, this game is something," was Athena's deflect dash. Oh, the way it made me feel! That delicious, bouncy, I just sent your projectile back at you energy. I love dashy jumpy feels in games. And Athena's deflect just awakened something primordial in my brain. And then I started wondering, what happens if I stack this with something else? What if I add Hermes? What does Ares do to this build? Suddenly, I'm not playing just to beat the game, but also to find out if an idea is as awesome as I picture it in my head. Bam! Remember, dopamine is about anticipating the reward. That's what I would call curiosity driven replayability. You're not really grinding. You're just running experiments. The weapon variety adds even more depth. The same sword plays differently depending on which aspect you unlock. You choose ranged or melee weapons, aggressive or defensive, fast and spammy or aimy thinky. Even the challenge layer is your choice. You can take the chaos curse, accept your father's trials, equip a weapon you're terrible at. So the difficulty is not settings in a menu like in some games. The difficulty is yours to tweak as part of the game's world. I love that about Hades. Now, I do have one complaint about the base design. As a scaredy cat, I love the bow weapon that lets me attack safely from afar. But the constant clicking for basic attacks is really annoying. As a designer, I'd give players that continuous pew 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 option from the start, instead of it being a hammer balloon upgrade. But that's a small thing in a very large, very well designed sandbox. And this is actually something I'm working on right now in my own game. I'm building elemental powers, and each one has its own feel, very much like the boons in Hades. The question I keep asking myself is, am I designing these so players pick the one that feels like them? Or am I accidentally designing them so one option is just OP and everyone picks that one? I want someone to pick the firepower because they're chaotic, and someone else to pick the love power because they're strategic, and both of them to feel like they can play the way they want to play. That's what I checked in my recent playtest. So, what do we have so far? A great run, a world you love, but none of that actually explains why you keep playing after you've already won. What keeps someone coming back after the credits roll? The list of minor prophecies. They are one of the most addictive systems in the entire game. The prophecy list is a menu of optional goals. Finish your run with this weapon. Reach this relationship level. Get this item. They don't expire. They don't nag you. They just sit there, and there are a lot of them. There's a psychological principle called the Zygarnik effect. The brain remembers unfinished tasks way better than completed ones. Every time you look at a prophecy that's 80% done, your brain literally can't let it go. Your brain goes like, we can't leave, not when we're this close. The dating sim aspect of Hades also works on the same principle. Conversations with characters are also a form of progress. You're not just completing grunts, you're building something with Thanatos, with Megara, with Achilles. Those stories go somewhere, and you need to know where. The result is that at any given moment in Hades, you have at least 4 things you're in the middle of: a run, a prophecy, a relationship, a build. Your brain is always holding on an unresolved to-do list. Which brings me back to the question, what's the real reason you can't stop playing Hades? It's not the combat, and it's not even the roguelike loop. Hades is designed so that you are never not in the middle of something. At every single level, the run, the build, the story, the relationships, the goals, there is no natural stopping point. And that is incredible game design. So, why did I fake being sick to keep playing Hades? Because the world made me want to stay. Because dying moved the story forward, because I was always in the middle of some build experiment, and because there was always one more thing on the list. I'm SpaceC, I make a magical girl game, and I think about this stuff a lot, which is probably why I also made an entire video on the psychology of why different players want completely different things from their games. You can check it out here. And if you want to watch me actually build all of this into my game, subscribe, because that's coming soon.